Hello, my name is Jingwei Zheng. I'm very excited to be in this class, sponsored and supported by Professor Marie Dolembo in her class, Introductions to Chinese Culture. I will be the guest speaker for this video, for this lectures, and I will try to make some corresponding videos for each of the lessons and units in this lecture, and so as to work as a kind of complement or correspondence materials, subsidiary materials for Professor Dolembo. I'm a Chinese artist, art historian, and curator. Firstly, as an artist, I just published my catalog and had my solo exhibition in Hong Kong back to this February. So this is a book about me, an extraordinary tour of art, the art and life of Jingwei Zheng. So it's about my 35 years study of Chinese painting and calligraphy and Western art history from a lot of people, including my father and my teachers. So this is a book about all of the vignettes, the story happening for my 3 decades study, beginning from my father's images, my father and my artworks, and to many things like the demonstration in the US. This is the demonstrations in Princeton University, a demonstration in Stanford and Yale, and the curation. I curated exhibitions in the University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee, where I had my MA degree back 2 years ago. So it's all about my life and my art. In addition, I'm a Chinese art historian, so I'm a scholar for the art historical studies. My vision is not only about China, but I extend myself to broad visions, including East Asian art history and even the art histories of the world. I hope I can have that kind of cosmopolitan vision to bridge a link between East Asian art or culture with the Western philosophies and concepts. So I want to see myself in a broader context of the human history, for either my empirical practice or scholarship. So I want to have a kind of broad visions of myself and my audience and everyone in the art field. Finally, I'm a curator. So I curated many exhibitions, and both in China, Hong Kong, and the US. And now I'm preparing some exhibitions in related to both Chinese and American artists. And I will give you more information in the future. So today, I think I would like to give you some basics introductions to Chinese calligraphy and painting, especially Chinese calligraphy, because calligraphy is the foundation for all the cornerstone for Chinese culture. And because this unit 2, is about the basic stuff for Chinese culture. So I would like you to understand that writing brush, calligraphy, this is the sui generis, the unique characteristics of Chinese people, Chinese civilization. I would like to do some demonstration. And during this demonstration, you will see how I interpret Chinese calligraphy in 5 or 6 categories or concepts, which will help you to better understand the aesthetics and philosophies of Chinese art and Chinese culture, broadly to Chinese culture. Now let me begin with the basic introduction of the equipment of Chinese art. Now, I just arrived here in the US for 3 weeks, so I don't have a lot of well-equipped accoutrements and materials for you. But I got everything basic, the rudimentary for you as a kind of demonstration. So I don't have the great camera to make videos now, like kind of easily maneuvered, movable camera now on my hand. I'm ordering one now, and it will be delivered soon. So I will use the computers to make a video, which means I can't show you a lot of stuff. I can only like grab something to you, and I hope you can understand, and thank you for your tolerance. So basically we have 4 treasures in China, and Chinese calligraphy. So the most important one, of course, is the brush, right? And the brush, it's like made of the bamboo. This is the place we hold the brush. And for these hairs, most of the hairs will be made by some wolf or squirrels or rats, very, very tough, harsh hairs. Okay. And another kind of hairs made of the soft one. So one is hard or harsh, the other one is soft and gentle and subtle. This kind of soft one is made of rabbit or wool, very, very soft hairs. Wool. We also have the ink slab. So this is a very small ink slab. It's easier for me to move this one everywhere, and I can put them in my school bag. But typically we will use a big one, elaborately done ink slab. But this is a very simple one. It's okay. And this is my ink. Now the ink was originally like this, rectangular shapes or this kind of different. This is a little bit different, but most of the ink was rectangular shape. And typically we need to have this one, a bowl with some water. Most of the time we need to have a spoon, a little spoon. So you use a little spoon. Let's just use a little spoon. Just pretend this is a little spoon. You scoop the water from the bowl, and you put the water, some drops of water, in the ink slab, and you grind the ink. So I don't have the spoon now. I don't want to use that big spoon, which looks awkward. So let me use this one, writing brush, instead. Let's saturate the writing brush, and let's add some water on this place. Okay. So let me move the camera a little bit so you can see some water here, right? So typically we will use a new one, but I prefer to use this old one. Okay, we just grind. Okay, when you grind, remember you gotta grind very slowly and gently. You don't do it like this. Okay, we do it slowly and gently. So and remember, the surface of this ink stick should be totally congruent and overlap with the ink slab. Okay, so don't do this like with a wedge. Always let them congruent with each other like this. Okay, so let me do it. And you grind slowly. Now this is very, very important process of Chinese culture. One of the important process, or one of the important, let's say, philosophical thinking in this process, in the whole Chinese culture. Why? Because when I'm grinding the ink stick now, I'm contemplating, meditating, This is kind of Zen philosophy. It's a kind of nuance or transcendentalism that you need to think, you need to perceive, you feel in your heart. That kind of quietness, gentleness, subtlety, and as I said, transcendentalism, which you transcend your body into the spiritual pursuit, into heaven, merging the heaven and earth in the ink slab, merging the human beings, our physical features with the spiritual thinking. So heaven and earth, body and spirit. Everything is in this simple ink slab. Just a few drops of water. So typically nowadays people don't use ink slabs or ink sticks anymore. This is such a pity and war for everyone, because you don't have the time to appreciate the details, the spiritual nirvana, spiritual thinking. You don't have the time or the leisure to enjoy the quietude. So most of the time while we are grinding the paper, we will talk to our friends. Like, you are my friends now, so I'm chit-chatting with you, a tete-a-tete. So let's enjoy this conversation. Sometimes if we don't have our friends accompany with us, we read. We read while we are grinding the ink. So typically the literati, which means the men of letter, the literati will do something like this. So they grind the paper while they are reading something. So it's kind of multi-sensory, many sensational thinkings in this process. It's not only about your body movement, it's about your spiritual contemplation, many activities, multifaceted or multitask, could be done simultaneously to savor, to have a taste, to that kind of slow, quiet, and peaceful life. So typically people don't do this now. They just use ink, the bottle ink, and they just directly pour the ink from the bottle, and that's it. For me, that is a kind of convenience, of course, but it's a degradation. It's a degradation of the millennium history and heritage. It's the degradations of the human wisdom. So we need to, of course, we love the convenience. We need to embrace for the convenience, like the internet or whatever. But sometimes we also need to slow down a little bit. Like this, grind some ink and prepare for writing. Now, because today I think I'm so excited, so I get a lot of water in this ink slab, so I have to grind for a long time. Typically, I only use several drops of water, so I can just have an ink in 30 seconds or 1 minute. But today is different. It's okay. We have abundant ink. That's great. So we can have more demonstrations later. So while I'm doing this, I got to do the other task because of the time limit. So let me introduce you while I'm grinding. So let's have a conversation while I'm enjoying the grinding. Okay. So this is the felt. The felt is made of wool again. So I'm going to put it flatly in front of the table. So later I will have some paper, right? And I'll put the paper on the felt, on top of the felt, right? So then the papers won't have any stand on our table, because most of the time this kind of paper is transparent, so that which means the ink could be saturated in the paper to the back, and then that will have a stain or make our table dirty. So typically we will have a huge felt. This is a small one. It's okay. So the next thing we want to introduce to you is about paper. Just now we mentioned about the saturation of paper, the transparent aspect of the paper. So let's try. Let's still use this brush. And I have to move this down a little bit. Okay. So this is a very precious paper. It's not like the typical normal rice paper. It's made by some plants, and let me put it here so you can see clearly. So we have ink now. Let's just dip the tip of the brush in the ink, and let's just write down something, or just pen something. Okay, let me just write down a very simple stroke 1. Okay, so this is 1 stroke. Now we can use this stroke or use the same brush to pen something like bamboo. Okay, so this is the leaf of the bamboo. We can use this one, the same brush, to pen like orchids, the flower. We can use the same brush to paint some rock, the landscape paintings. Okay, so I'm still using the same brush. Remember, I don't frequently get the ink from the ink slab. I don't do this frequently. I use the same brush, same stroke to finish all of this stuff, and I can keep going endlessly. I mean, until the whole brush is dry. Okay, so this is very important, but we are going to elaborate on this concept in the future with 1 stroke. But let's just keep everything simple currently, because we're talking about the paper. Now, just now we mentioned about the word saturation. Look, this is the front. This is the front of the paper, and this is the back. You see that? Most of the strokes or the images now is saturated or permeated to the back, and so we need to have a felt, right? So this is the first kind of paper, which is very, very quintessential, typical Chinese rice paper, made by rice or plants, some special plants, not rice, but special plants. But we also have some other kind of process paper, let's say like this. It's very, very similar to this paper, right? But let's try it, and then let's see the difference. I will still use the same brush. Let me still write the same stroke, beginning from 1, and then bamboo, orchid, and then the rock. Okay, now let's see this one. This is the front part, right? The front. But look at the back, right? The ink now is not saturated, is not permeated. Why? Because this kind of original paper, let's call it raw paper. The raw paper, which means it doesn't have any, or it hasn't been processed by any chemical or man-made treatment. So it got pores, those tiny stuff in the paper, very, very tiny, that you can't see it clearly. It's very infinitesimal. It's very, very small. But because of those tiny pores, the ink could be saturated. After we add some chemical stuff like alum, A-L-U-M, it's kind of chemical stuff for, I don't know, some special usages in medicines and science or chemical stuff. After adding alum, the paper or those pores will be totally covered, and so the ink could not be permeated through the paper. So that's what you see, right? Now you see can't get through. So this is the most two important papers in Chinese art. One is the raw paper, and the other one, we don't even have a decent name for this. Some people call it like like polished paper, or fully prepared paper, whatever. You just, because it has some chemical stuff on top of the paper. So this is two typical papers in Chinese art. In Tang, Song, and Yuan dynasties, I mean like the medieval Chinese art, people frequently use this kind of paper, this kind of polished paper for their art. They like this kind of fully treated, processed paper, because for them it might be better to experience the subtlety and the precision of the stroke, because every stroke could be precisely preserved and maintained. In Ming and Qing dynasty, that's around like 500 years ago, we have more advanced technologies, and so the papers could be made bigger and bigger. And many maverick bohemian artists at that moment, they like to have art as kind of self-expression. They don't like this kind of carefully calculated, premeditated treatment to the paper. Instead, they like rawness. They like to be wild, to be raw, to be spontaneous. So in this way, they can just splash the ink, water, everything, pour them down, to create that kind of expressionism, abstract ideas, embodiments of their spirits. So you see the difference, right? So in the medieval time, people are more like reasonable and rational. So they like something like this kind of paper, which could preserve each stroke very well. But gradually, people have the spiritual liberation that they like to have a lot of water and ink in their brush. Look at this. So now, look, it's the stroke, because I got a lot of waters on my brush now. So everything now is like enlarged, right? With a lot of water saturated, enlarged. Let me show you this. Right, look, the ink, so the water, so everything is intermingled and creating that kind of mystery, spontaneity, and expressionism. So this is kind of art created around like 500 years ago until today. This kind of art was typically seen in the medieval period, medieval art. Okay, so now we have the basics demonstration for you to know all of these basics equipments of Chinese four treasures. This, 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 and this. So four things. And remember, it's very important to grind the ink rather than using the ink from the bottom, you know, the chemical ink. Okay, so next part, I'm going to give you the demonstration of calligraphy. And I'm going to let you know that calligraphy, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, calligraphy is the foundation of Chinese culture. Why? Because calligraphy represents many things, or connote many ideas in the process of writings, which might include anything about the artistic pursuits, literary connotations, philosophical thinkings, or connoisseurship. Now we are going to elaborate them in the next next part of this demonstration. Now, let me briefly introduce you something for our demonstration today. In order to better help you to better understand, I print them in these images. So this is a stele. Stele means a kind of stone and with inscriptions on the surface of the stele. So people inscribed and then ask the engraver to carve, to engrave the writing on the stone. Typically, this kind of stone, which was elaborately done with beautiful toppings and the bottom, should be made in memoriam to some great events or grand ceremonies, you know, for pomp and circumstance. This is a stele made by Liu Gongquan. I mean, the writing was created by Liu Gongquan, very, very famous Chinese calligrapher in Tang Dynasty. He was born in 1778 and he passed away in 865. He created this stele when he was 64 years old. That's 841 AD. 841. And this is the rubbing. This is the rubbing of the calligraphy from this stele. Rubbing, stele. And as you can see, the stele was broken. So you got a broken line here. So the stone was like broken into pieces, 2 pieces. Now, this is great. This might be a very huge images, and actually this one is in Metropolitan Museum. You go to Metropolitan Museum's collection, you're going to see this one, Liu Gongquan 玄秘塔 stele. Now, what's the problem of this kind of rubbing? It's, as I said, it's very big. When something is very big, it's difficult to be preserved, right? So Chinese people are very smart. Chinese artisan cut all of these stele. We read from the right to left, you know, like this, from bottom, from top to bottom. So read from here to here. So Chinese artisan cut all of these writings, sentence by sentence, and they mount those small pieces, you know, the pieces of the writings on a book like this, a kind of album. Of course, this is an empty album, but I just want to show you how we preserve the artifacts. So we cut the rubbings, sentence by sentence, one by one, and to fit in the album. So look how tiny this album is. So if I want to fit this one in this album, so I need to cut like each line, like got to be very, very small, right? And then to fit it one by one, fit in this album. And actually I got an album on my hand. Again, I printed. This is the cover of the album, just like this, cover, right? And we write the title here. So this is the title, and then this is the rubbing, right? So this is what I'm saying, right? This is a book. You open a book, right? You cut it first, and you paste it in this album, line by line. So just now, the whole writing, the whole studio, the rubbings was like this. Now it was dwindled. The size was dwindled and cut into an album. So which is easier for you to preserve? Of course, this one, right? This is difficult to carry, and you're going to lose this one, or it's going to be easily crinkled, or wrinkled or broken, right? Because you're moving it. But this is okay. Hundreds of years probably could be still preserved in a great condition. So at the end of this album, this is the album, right? This is the content of the album: cover, content, and this is the end. The end of the album, we can see the collector's writing. It's called postscript. So the collector writes some inscriptions or thinkings at the end of the album in order to express his connoisseurship, his understandings and his appreciation, or the historiographies or anything related to this album, some anecdotes, whatever, some stories related to this album, and his ideas, his thinking, or his, how did he get this album? How much he paid for this album? Many things, the nitty gritty. Could be big one, about a philosophical thinking, to the small one, the nitty gritty stuff, like how did I purchase this album? Some stories, interesting anecdotal details. So this is the cover, content, and the end, the inscriptions by the collectors, connoisseurship. So Liu Gongquan's 玄秘塔 is a study, and this study was a kind of in memoriam to a famous monk, who was an esteemed guest of the six consecutive emperors in late Tang Dynasty. And after he passed away, the emperor got an edict and asked people to make the pagodas to preserve the remains and relics of this monk. And the emperors also asked high-ranking officers to write encomiums, or writings, a kind of to eulogize this monk. And finally, the emperor asked Liu Gongquan to inscribe the writing. So that's practice, like 1 word or 2 words from this writing, and let me show you the magics of Chinese calligraphy. Still, let's use this brush. Remember, don't write something like this. Always try your best at the beginning of the writing. Make sure that it's like upright position. So let's just write the first one. The first characters, Tang Dynasty, Tang. The first characters here. First one. Okay. So remember, because just now we penned this area, right? Because we got a lot of water, remember? So a lot of parts here was also permeated and saturated out of the proportion. But it's okay. It's okay. It's a little bit different from the original one, because the original one was on the stone, carved on the stone. So it won't have any permeation and saturation, so the shape will be preserved very well. But my shapes is a little bit out of proportion because the paper and the water, especially the water in my brush, so make it this my writing's a little bit different from the original one, but it's okay. This is still great writing. Now, my point here is that I'm going to use this writing, or Liu Gongchen's 玄秘塔, as a way to tell you some key aspects of Chinese calligraphy. Now, the first one, of course, we talk about art. So we are going to talk about the artistic value. You know, the writings should have some artistic aesthetics involved, inherent in these visual images. So the writing, of course, the artistic value, of course, are mostly related to the skills, how you use the brush. Now, for example, just now when I write this one, I raise my elbow to write something like this, right? Of course, you can put down your elbow here. Right? So we have two kind of artistic appreciation here. One is like you raise your elbow and you stand up to write. The other one is that you sit down and you do something quietly while you're putting your elbow down. Now, both of the ways, either way is fine. They're all great. It's just based on your experience, your practice. If you feel comfortable to stand up and raise your elbow, that's great, because you can really think about this. You can maneuver and wield your brush with all the different orientations. It's kind of three-dimensional expression, very expressive. However, you can also like sit down and do something quietly and just write something small, in a small scale, with a slow pace, as a kind of meditation. So either way is fine. Okay, so this is the first one. So in the writing, we have many artistic components. I'm just giving you one example, thousands of examples, thousands of philosophies inside. But let's just have a basic understanding. So first thing is the artistic expressions. The second one is the literary or intellectual heritage. So just now we talk about the story. Remember I told you that it was a monk, famous monk, is deemed and venerated by the 6 consecutive emperors, right? And the story, blah, 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 blah. So this is all about the culture, about literary, about the kind of preservation to the human wisdom, to tell you a story. So this is another facet, another aspect of Chinese calligraphy. The third thing is a kind of self-representation, self-proclamation, or morality. Now, this is very important. Chinese people regard morality is the top priority of our culture. So you don't need to write good writings or good calligraphy, but you need to be a good person, a great, righteous, wonderful person. So again, let's go back to Liu Gongchen. Liu Gongchen was a very famous calligrapher. He was also a famous politician. So one day the emperor asked him, hey, why did your writing so good like this? And could you teach me how to write it well? Liu Gongchen said, your writing is controlled by your mind or your heart. When your mind is upright, your writings is upright. So remember I told you just now, always keep your writing brush like this. It's kind of simple. It's kind of philosophical thinking. Actually, no. Sometimes you can even lie down the brush like this to have that kind of expressive stroke, spontaneous. This is great. This is a great rock created by this kind of disorderly brush, messy and terribly shaped brush. But it's okay. It's okay. This is great. This is great. So the point is not about whether you really need to keep everything upright. It's a simile. It's like a metaphor, whatever. It's kind of a figurative saying that you need to have a clear, pure, upright personality to be a great person. That is the prerequisite to the writing, prerequisite to Chinese history and Chinese art. Okay, to be a good person is the prerequisite for everything. Okay, so this is about the spiritual stuff, the morality of the moral aspect of Chinese calligraphy. Okay, number four, connoisseurship. So just now we mentioned about connoisseurship. Connoisseur means appreciator or appraiser to art. How you appreciate, or a person appreciates Chinese art. Now, connoisseurship means many collectors in the different dynasties or different period of time, they collected this album, right, as their treasure. So they will add some personal components in the album. For instance, some people might have some stamps. If you see it clearly, they got some stamps here made by, you can't see it clearly here because everything here is black and white. But we got two stamps here by red color, red one. Two stamps here. They are the stamps from the collectors. So the collectors have their name and their seals on top of these artworks to showcase that they are the masters or the owners of these artifacts. And some of the erudite or knowledgeable collectors would write a colophons or prescripts or eulogies, at the end of the album or at the end of the scroll to express their understandings to these artworks. So this is kind of connoisseurship. So many things involved in Chinese calligraphy. We know it got some artistic aspect, right? And then it got some literary or intellectual heritage. Then it is the symbol of one person's morality. It's kind of self-proclamation to embrace some good personalities. And finally, it also got many stories related to collectors, collecting as a way to showcase one person's appreciation to the arts. That's connoisseurship. So today we have a very lengthy video about many important components of Chinese calligraphy. As I reiterated, Chinese calligraphy is the foundation of its culture. It's a kind of expression of Chinese people's understanding, wisdom, zeitgeist, and many aspects of Chinese lives. So if you know this one, if you know how to do this, if you know how to add the water in this, and then enjoy that kind of process, enjoy the process to write, to paint, to experience every stroke, every single stroke. Either it could be slowly created brush stroke, or could be swiftly executed spontaneous expressionism. Either of them will be great. It's a kind of spiritual meditation and transcendentalism. Thank you so much for your viewing. I'm looking forward into seeing you in the next lectures.